Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more.
Only one new movie made it into the top 5 movies for this weekend's domestic box office that ended on August 4th, 2024, but Deadpool and Wolverine remained the highest grossing movie for the weekend. So between it and the other 4 movies that comprise the top 5 movies at the domestic box office this weekend, their cumulative total domestic earnings were about $153.2 million, which was a 44.6% decline over last weekend's similar cumulative total of $276.4 million. But before proceeding, I'd like to ask everyone to please like this video, please leave a comment, please subscribe to support this channel, and please press the bell to receive notifications. Thanks! And some significant changes occurred this weekend within this year's current 3 highest grossing movies, both domestically and worldwide. The highest grossing movie so far this year, both domestically and globally, remains Disney Pixar's animated movie entitled Inside Out 2. Domestically, the movie earned another $6.7 million this weekend and $6.4 million during the week to bring its current domestic box office total up to $626.9 million, keeping it as the only movie so far this year to break $600 million domestically. Internationally, the movie earned another $36 million to bring its current international box office total up to $928.2 million. So globally, Inside Out 2 earned another $49.1 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $1,555.1 million, which keeps it as the first and only movie so far this year to not only have broken $1 billion globally, but also $1.5 billion globally. In fact, Inside Out 2 has now earned $109.4 million more than last year's highest grossing movie, Barbie, and its $1,445.6 million. In terms of estimated break-even points, Inside Out 2 has a reported production budget of $200 million, which, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, as well as the additional costs of marketing the movie and other miscellaneous costs that the studio pays above and beyond the production budget, yields an estimated break-even point range of $500 million to $600 million. Thus, Inside Out 2 has most definitely made bank, and I'll be projecting its possible final domestic and global gross box office earnings later in the video. Now, for those of you who watched my box office roundup video last week, or either of my videos that I had released before Deadpool and Wolverine premiered, then you may remember me saying that the movie is most likely going to become this year's second highest grossing movie, both domestically and worldwide. Well, that happened this weekend, and this is only its second weekend at the box office. Domestically, the movie earned another $97 million during the weekend and $87.1 million during the week to bring its current domestic box office total up to $395.6 million, which makes the movie the second highest grossing movie domestically so far this year in only its second week at the box office, ahead of Despicable Me 4. Internationally, the movie earned another $195.2 million to bring its current international box office total up to $428.5 million. So globally, the movie earned another $379.3 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $824.1 million, which catapulted the movie past both Despicable Me 4 and Dune Part 2. But that's not all it did. With its reported production budget of $250 million, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $625 million to $750 million. So Deadpool and Wolverine made bank as of this weekend. So the third highest grossing movie, both domestically and worldwide, is now Despicable Me 4, which was displaced by Deadpool and Wolverine. Domestically, the movie earned another $11.3 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $314 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $51.6 million to bring its current international box office total up to $438.3 million. So globally, the movie earned another $74.6 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $752.2 million. And for Despicable Me 4, with its reported production budget of $100 million, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $250 million to $300 million, respectively. Thus, Despicable Me 4 has already made bank. So this weekend's top 5 movies at the domestic box office included the following. Disney and Marvel Studios' newest MCU movie, Deadpool and Wolverine, clung to number 1. Universal Pictures, Warner Bros., and Amblin Entertainment's sequel, Twisters, clung to number 2. Binding Edge Pictures and Warner Bros. Horror, crime, and mystery movie Trap opened to number 3. Illumination Entertainment's animated sequel, Despicable Me 4, fell to number 4. And finally, Disney Pixar's animated movie Inside Out 2 fell to number 5. Since I already talked about the box office earnings for Deadpool and Wolverine, we'll move on to Twisters. Domestically, the movie earned another $22.7 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $165.6 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $12.7 million to bring its current international box office total up to $78.8 million. So globally, the movie earned another $53.6 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $274.4 million. Domestically, the movie Untitled Chapter earned $15.6 million, and internationally it earned $4.4 million for a global gross opening weekend box office haul of $20 million. And we'll skip Despicable Me 4 and Inside Out 2 since I've already covered their weekend box office earnings. I'm also continuing to track several other movies that are no longer in the top 5, which includes the following. Paramount Pictures' sci-fi horror movie A Quiet Place Day 1 fell to number 9. Sony and Columbia Pictures movie Bad Boys Ride or Die fell to number 10. Apple Original Films movie Fly Me to the Moon fell to number 13. And Disney and 20th Century Fox's sci-fi movie sequel Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes fell to number 18. Domestically, A Quiet Place Day 1 earned another $1.4 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $137.4 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $1.9 million to bring its current international box office total up to $121.4 million. So globally, the movie earned another $5 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $258.8 million. Domestically, Bad Boys Ride or Die earned another $600,000 to bring its current domestic box office total up to $192.9 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $1.9 million to bring its current international box office total up to $205.3 million. Thus, globally, the movie earned another $3 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $398.2 million. Domestically, Fly Me to the Moon earned another $350,000 to bring its current domestic box office total up to $20 million. Internationally, the movie appears to have not earned any additional revenue, which keeps its international box office total at $17.7 million. So the movie's current global gross box office total rose to $37.7 million. Domestically, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes earned another $119,000 to bring its current domestic box office total up to $171.1 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $138,000 to bring its current international box office total up to $226.1 million. So globally, the movie earned another $298,000 to bring its current global gross box office total up to $397.2 million. Now, to know whether these movies are going to break even or not, as well as how much money they might be losing, we need to look at their production budgets, which we can then multiply by 2.5 for a single mid-range estimated break-even point, or by both 2.5 and 3.0 for a broader estimated break-even point range. For Twisters, with its reported production budget of $200 million, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $500 million to $600 million. For A Quiet Place Day 1, with its reported production budget of $67 million, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $167.5 million to $201 million. For Bad Boys Ride or Die, with its reported high production budget of $100 million, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $250 million to $300 million. For Fly Me to the Moon, with its reported production budget of $100 million, that yields an estimated mid-range break-even point of $250 million. For Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, with its even higher $165 million production budget, we get an estimated break-even point range of $412.5 million to $495 million. In this video, I am no longer projecting what the final domestic or global gross box office earnings might be for the movies A Quiet Place Day 1, Bad Boys Ride or Die, Fly Me to the Moon, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, because their expected future earnings are currently too small or possibly non-existent. For A Quiet Place Day 1, with its current global gross box office earnings of $258.8 million and its estimated break-even point range of $167.5 million to $201 million, the movie has made bank. For Bad Boys Ride or Die, with its current global gross box office earnings of $398.2 million and its estimated break-even point range of $250 million to $300 million, the movie has made bank. For Fly Me to the Moon, with its current global gross box office earnings of $37.7 million and its estimated mid-range break-even point of $250 million, the movie currently stands to lose somewhere around $212.3 million in global gross box office revenue. For Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, with its current global gross box office revenue of $397.2 million and its estimated break-even point range of $412.5 million to $495 million, the movie currently stands to lose between $15.3 million to $97.3 million in global gross box office revenue. Then by dividing the global gross box office revenue losses by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, the affected studios currently stand to lose the following. For Fly Me to the Moon, Apple Original Films currently stands to lose around $106.1 million. For Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Disney and 20th Century Fox currently stand to lose around $7.7 million to $48.6 million. And that now brings us to the movies whose final domestic and global gross box office revenues I am currently projecting, which includes Deadpool and Wolverine, Twisters, Despicable Me 4, and Inside Out 2. For Deadpool and Wolverine to project what the movie's final domestic box office earnings might be, I'll use a range of average weekly drops that are derived from the previous 33 MCU movies, whose overall franchise average weekly drop is 38.19%, with a standard deviation of 6.45%. And one standard deviation above and below the MCU's franchise average weekly drop gives me a range of 31.74% to 44.65%. And using that range, I can project that the final domestic box office for the movie may range from $623.9 million at the low end, $693.4 million at the mid-range, and $790.7 million at the upper end, which is a much higher range than last week's projection. And by using the movie's current domestic share of 48%, which is higher than last week but still just under one standard deviation above the franchise average of 41.41%, I can project that the final global gross box office for the movie may range from $1,299.7 million at the low end, $1,444.6 million at the mid-range, and $1,647.2 million at the upper end, which is also a much higher range than last week's projection. So while I don't currently believe that Deadpool and Wolverine will be able to outperform Inside Out 2, I can't rule out the possibility. For Twisters, assuming a range of possible average weekly drops from 30 to 40%, I can project that the final domestic box office for the movie may range from $257 million at the low end, $271.5 million at the mid-range, and $290.7 million at the upper end, which is lower than last week's projection. And by using the movie's current domestic share of 71.28%, which is higher than last week's, I can project that the final global gross box office for the movie may range from $360.5 million at the low end, $380.9 million at the mid-range, and $407.8 million at the upper end, which is a lower projection than last week. And unfortunately for the movie, that entire projected range falls short of its estimated break-even point range of $500 million to $600 million. So the movie still appears to be a flop, as it currently stands to lose somewhere on the order of $92.2 million to $239.5 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that Universal Pictures, Warner Brothers, and Amblin Entertainment currently stand to lose around $46.1 million to $119.7 million. Now, as for the movie Despicable Me 4, given that it's actually the 6th movie in a franchise that began in 2010, I can use box office data from the franchise's previous 5 movies to calculate a franchise average weekly drop of only 27.18%, which is very good. And using the related standard deviation of 4.94%, I can create a statistically defined range of possible average weekly drops for Despicable Me 4 that's one standard deviation above and below the franchise average, which gives me a range from 22.24% to 32.13%. And using that range, I can project that the final domestic box office for the movie may range from $361.4 million at the low end, $373.6 million at the mid-range, and $390 million at the upper end, which is a more narrow range than last week's projection. And using the movie's current domestic share of 41.74%, which is lower than last week's, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $865.9 million at the low end, $895 million at the mid-range, and $934.4 million at the upper end, which is slightly higher than last week's projection. So Despicable Me 4 is currently destined to remain the 3rd highest grossing movie both domestically and worldwide behind Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine. And finally, for Inside Out 2, assuming a range of possible average weekly draws from 30 to 40%, I can project that the final domestic box office for the movie may range from $646.5 million at the low end, $650.9 million at the mid-range, and $656.7 million at the upper end, which is a slightly higher range than last week's projection. Then by using the movie's current domestic share of 40.31%, which is slightly lower than last week's, I can project that the movie's final global gross box office earnings may range from $1,604 million at the low end, $1,615 million at the mid-range, and $1,629 million at the upper end, which is also slightly higher than last week's projection that strongly suggests that the movie is probably going to break $1,600 million at the global box office. Thus, Twisters and Fly Me to the Moon remain definite flops, while Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes remains a probable flop. But Deadpool and Wolverine joins Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, A Quiet Place Day 1, and Bad Boys Ride or Die in having made bank. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.